Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields. And today I've got a PT owner from New Jersey, Jeff Sallade, co-owner of Three Dimensional Physical Therapy, who has been listening to the podcast for a while and reached out to me via email saying, hey, I recently listened to your podcast about partnerships with Eric Miller, some great insight, but hey, we've actually put it in practice and thought it'd be cool to share some of the pros and cons of what we're doing. So Jeff, hey, first of all, thanks for reaching out and thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nathan, for having me on the show. It's great to be here. Big fan of the show.
Thanks. I've said this before, and I tell listeners, hey, reach out anytime if you have questions, comments, or even recommendations for topics or guests. Thank you first for actually taking me up on that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's kind of cool. Talk to me about, we'll just get into it right now. Well, first of all, share a little bit about you so people know where you're coming from and then I can start asking you some questions about your partnerships that you're developing.
Sure. Yeah. I've been in practice as a therapist for almost 25 years now, and probably similar to many private practice owners, I got to a point where I felt like, hey, I could probably do this better if I did it myself. So another therapist that I knew, who we decided, hey, it's the two of us, let's do this together. So that was 10 years ago. We just had our 10-year anniversary in August of this year. So that was really cool. We had a really awesome event in our community. We got a bunch of small businesses out. We had a mechanical bull there, man. It was awesome.
That's cool.
So yeah, it was really great community event to celebrate our 10 years. But yeah, so, we've had our practice for 10 years. And, when we first started, we just were hoping to get enough patients to be able to take up our time during the day. We didn't want to just be sitting in the clinic looking at each other. And then after a year or two, we had a decent amount of growth. And but we never really gave a lot of thought to how we wanted to grow. So, we're an orthopedic and sports clinic, so what I think is a pretty typical outpatient clinic, and the numbers just kind of kept growing. So we had hired a couple of therapists, and the way that the second clinic came about was we had a sports performance coach that we knew, and he was about 20 or 25 minutes away. And he said, hey, a vacancy just opened up in my plaza. Would you guys ever have interest in opening up here? And yeah. I remember my partner and I looked at each other, and I was like, hey, I don't want to be the one to go there. And he was saying the same thing, So we were like, well, what do we do if we want to open a second office, right?
Right.
So we had a therapist who had only worked for us for about a year, but we really liked him. Mm-hmm. And we knew he wanted to do some bigger and better things and have more responsibility. And he was actually from the area pretty close to that opportunity. So we said, hey, let's give him a chance. And at first He stepped in as kind of like a clinic manager. So my partner and I, we funded the new clinic, and it became apparent that he was going to do a really good job once he got in there. So that's when we started kicking around the partnership model. So
yeah. And now how many clinics do you have?
So we have 5, and then we're opening 2 more. We're going to have 2 more locations open by November 15th. So right now we're kind of in the crazy mode of managing the build outs and the permits of 2 offices right now. So it's a little bit crazy right now, but it's a good crazy.
Well, congratulations, man. And I assume that you've now taken this partnership model that you started, but then refined over the years, and now have expanded that to the other clinics as well.
Yeah. So once we allowed Ryan, who is our first partner, once we allowed him to buy into that second office, my partner Ken and I, we looked at each other and was like, hey, you know what? Ryan's working there and he's benefiting from having ownership in that office, right? So we have an outstanding employee who's super motivated because the financial incentive that he has to do a good job, right?
For sure.
And we said, hey, maybe this is a good idea. Maybe our retention rate will be really good. And so we had another guy that was working for us, and he really wanted to have his own practice, but he didn't want to start it from scratch like we did. Uh-huh. So we gave him an opportunity. And this guy, his name is Chuck. He's a total go-getter. And he opened his office a year after that second office was open, and he is doing phenomenally as well. So all the other offices, right, they have, every single office of ours now has my partner and I always own at least 50% of the office. And
Okay.
then the partner there has a percent ownership as well. We just kind of negotiate and it's usually based on their comfort level with how much risk they want to take.
Now, are you also asking them to put in some money essentially to buy into that clinic?
Yeah. So, right. So from the very beginning, identify a location. So for instance, these two locations that we're opening right now, we identify the location, and then we've identified the person, the therapist that
Right.
works with us that is going to go there.
Right.
And so from the very beginning, all the costs are split according to the percent ownership.
Oh, okay.
So, right, let's say if a total clinic from start to finish costs $100,000, and my partner and I are 50% owners, and the other person is 50%, we're each putting up $50,000.
Right,
so
right.
It's where they know it from the beginning, and they know what what they need to be responsible for financially. We just have found that works best. They own the clinic from the beginning. They feel like, hey, they feel like they're an owner right away from the very first thing that's purchased.
Mm-hmm.
So
now in these situations, I've got a couple directions that we can go with this, but since we're talking about their percentage of ownership, do you then just kind of agree to a basic salary for that partner to simply be there, and then what do you do with distributions after the fact? I don't want to get too detailed if you don't want to, but how do you establish the financial relationship, and then also consider that you are doing some not only management but also providing back end services? How do you account for that? So how do you establish this financial relationship going forward?
Yeah, really good question. So first of all, yes. So the therapists that take over the clinic, they run the day-to-day stuff, and so they have a guaranteed pay. They have a salary for their, for all the work they do related to their clinic. And most of the time, they've been a staff therapist for a couple of years, so their guaranteed pay usually takes a step back. Not a drastic step back.
Okay.
They're not eating peanut butter and jelly, every meal of the day, but we want them to feel like they're not happy with the guaranteed pay that they're getting. If that would be the only pay they would get, they wouldn't be happy with that. So
okay. So you actually scale back their salary just a little bit because they're going to get more on the back end based on performance.
Yeah, because then what we do is we calculate profits monthly. So we have a way of setting up a bank account, and in each of these offices, just from like a accounting standpoint, they're their own separate LLCs. Okay. And each have their own separate bank account. So everything is separate. Okay. For each
LLC, you have your own books as well. I mean, they have their own financials.
Yeah, my wife used to do our accounting, and when we got to 5 clinics, she said, "I'm tapping out." So now we have the guy who does our taxes. He has taken over the month to month, like QuickBooks, right? So yeah, they have their own books, each clinic. And so we know on the first of each month how profitable or unprofitable the clinic was. And if there's profit, my partner and I, we take our distribution and we choose, hey, here's how much we're going to put back into the company.
Sure.
And then the partner, they're kind of free to do with what they want. So they get potentially a monthly payout of their profits, right?
Sure,
and I can say, right, you could talk to some of the partners, so far, I think they're all pretty happy with how the setup of their deal,
Gotcha.
So
how do you set it up? So if you're 50-50, have you already predetermined the tiebreaker? Like, do you have final vote if you can't come to an agreement on something?
Right. We haven't really had to, like, maybe during COVID, there were some crazy votes that we took, but like normally on a day-to-day process, there hasn't really been a time, but yeah, we have it. Each partner has an operating agreement. And it's defined in there. Hey, you know what? If there's ever like big decisions, here's how it works. And so I get a vote, my partner gets a vote, and then the other partner in the office gets a vote too. So
I gotcha.
It's clearly defined, right? And we haven't really had to do anything like that, but you definitely want to make sure that you got to think of everything, before it all happens, so that you make sure that when you do run into some things, the rules are just kind of like clearly defined.
Yeah,
how
exactly.
You take care of all that.
And I'm sure you established this with a lawyer ahead of time to walk you through these scenarios. And that's a few $1,000s that's well spent in order to establish this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I highly recommend that. But not to get too detailed or into the weeds, but do you have, say, like, have you had to agree on like set aside accounts for rainy day funds and stuff like that, or how much in a line of credit that you have for each LLC? Do you go that far with each partner to figure out some of those things?
Yeah. So, when we were first setting this up, we consulted with a bunch of different private practices. And so here's what we came up with. So each office has their bank account. And in one of the accounts, like our checking account that we just kind of pay all the bills from,
Pay the expenses, yeah.
there's a certain threshold that always has to be there. Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's basically like, I think it's like 3 months of expenses, I want to say, or maybe 2 months of expenses,
Great.
right?
Yeah,
So
good.
we know that we can't go below that. So there's a buffer built in there. But every once in a while, when like payroll falls at the beginning of a month and rent hits, it goes below that. But by the end of the month, it has to be back at that threshold. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not at the end of the month, if it's not at that threshold, then we know that, the clinic wasn't profitable that month, and we have everybody has to do an equity call, right? And you have to pay money. Mm-hmm. Just like if it is profitable, everybody gets to take distributions. So there's good and bad with being a partner, right? That's one of the cons, right? The partner has to get in the mindset of, hey, if I'm not profitable by X amount of money, I'm responsible for doing an equity call and contributing money back to the office.
So this partner that you have, there's a difference between hard equity and soft equity, where soft equity might just be, hey, you're going to get some bonuses or some profit sharing model or something like that. But hard equity being their name is actually on the legal paperwork for the LLC. And is that how you've established it? These are hard equity partners?
Yep, hard equity partners. They're on all the paperwork. Yep. We have a couple of clinics where there's a partner. Like, for instance, the clinic that I work in, that I treat in, we have a manager, a clinic manager. He doesn't have ownership in the office, but he has like a profitability incentive, right?
Sure.
So he has less risk, right? If there's a month where we're not profitable, he isn't putting money back up. He isn't penalized for that. He just isn't getting paid out an incentive for the month.
Right.
So we've done that model as well.
Sure.
People who aren't as willing to kind of take the jump into ownership. But the other thing that we do, we automatically, before we put out any distributions each month, 5% of the profits go into, we have another account, we have a savings account for each LLC, for each clinic.
Right.
And 5% of the profits go into the savings account before anything gets paid out.
I gotcha. And just to set aside for what, rainy days or taxes?
Yeah, right. If there's like a big piece of equipment somebody wants to buy, like a BFR, all the clinics have BFR units now, they can use that money to purchase it. Or, we kind of learned during COVID, we didn't have enough money in our savings account, so now we kind of make sure that, hey, we're not spending that money as readily, so yeah, just to have for anything that the clinic would want to use.
And I'm assuming that now you've already established an umbrella company that charges each clinic to do the billing and do the payroll and the accounting and these legal services. I mean, there's a number of things that the umbrella company has. Do you have something like that in place as well?
Yeah, we do. So we do our billing in-house, billing like authorization. We have 6 or 7 employees that do that. We have a marketing employee. We have like an operations employee. So there are certain positions, right, that don't generate revenue, that are central to the company.
Right.
So each office contributes to that. And the way that we determine that is by percent of collections, right? So if we have $100 in collections in a month, and one office does $20 of collections, they're paying 20% of the expenses fees that are like more like we call them management expenses.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And that's one way to do it, the way we did it. And maybe it's similar to yours, but we simply charged a flat percentage when we called it the management fee. And based on what I've talked to other PT owners about and also other industries, that sometimes lands between 15 to 20% of collections will go towards the management fee to cover those types of expenses, whether it's marketing, payroll, billing, and collections. Do you think that number sounds about right based on where
so we actually, we do that as well. So the percent collections pays for like the salaries of the employees, and then there's just some other things, some other expenses that are like sent to, and we charge a flat percentage to the clinics to account for those things. And those are like our expenses for our EMR I'm trying to think of some, like our liability insurance, all that stuff just
Sure.
kind of like falls under a flat percentage.
Or maybe like promotional gear, whether it's
Exactly.
shirts or
Yep. Yeah,
swag of
that
some
that
kind or
that
another.
benefits all of the
Right.
offices. We just pay for that centrally.
I got you. Cool. And so each lease then is the lease then held by each separate entity for each location,
Yes, essentially, yes. It's
essentially?
yeah,
Okay.
each location, the lease is under each of that individual entity. Yes.
Yeah. And so then this partner would still be on the essentially on the hook for the lease as well, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I'll give you
Interesting.
an example. Like now this was we had a lease where we had all of our like billing and insurance employees at a separate location. And so that was all paid for by all the offices
Right.
individually.
Sure.
They each contributed. And so what happened was after COVID, right, everybody worked from home. And after that, nobody wanted to come back to the office. So we had this really sweet office, right, that nobody, was going to work in. So
Oh
we just
no.
ate the lease, right? So everybody had to like each office, because it was a management facility, each office had to contribute a certain percentage to basically make up for the fact that we were getting out of that lease.
Oh no. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, it's okay. Everybody's much happier working from home. And I
That's
think they
cool.
do a much better job working from home too. And now going forward, we have less expense
Oh, that's
on,
true.
one less lease to worry about.
Yeah, and so and then to add these additional locations with separate LLCs, do you have to go through the full credentialing process, or do you have relationships with your insurance companies where like, hey, we're adding another location, it's a separate LLC? What's that process like?
Yeah, it's automatic now. We have the person who does like our operations. She knows all the steps to follow. It's just like kind of hiring another physical therapist, right? Who isn't
Yeah.
credentialed. As soon as we, these two offices that are in the process of being open, she's already on top of the credentialing for those offices. So
Mhm.
it happens pretty quickly.
But it's a whole new process. It's not like most insurance. Well, if you stay under one LLC, you just say, hey, I'm going to add another location. It's a full blown credentialing
Well,
process again, right?
everything is each LLC has their own tax ID number, but we do all
Right.
of our billing under like a central tax under that umbrella company.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So everything falls under that tax ID number.
Oh, okay.
So
Gotcha.
the
So,
credentialing is
mhm.
easier.
Yeah, understood. So it's not, I see where you're going now. That tax ID number of the umbrella company is the one that's adding a location. Got it.
Exactly.
Understood.
So this might be good to cover. So the way that we handle because right, like a question that we get from partners is, hey, how do I know that the money that my clinic is producing is being distributed to my office if all
Right.
the money is coming into the
To one
central location,
location.
right?
Sure.
So we make sure that like our billing software is able to, like to the penny, is able to account for any money that any collection that happens at clinic X, Y, or Z gets
Hmm.
credited to clinic X, Y, or Z. So basically every week we do we move money around from our management company, from our
Right.
central bank account out to the individual clinics, so that like every
Nice.
week they're getting their collections into their bank account.
Yeah. Your bookkeeper's got to be almost full time on this stuff, man.
Definitely getting more and more hours. Our accountant, we've become known as his biggest headache in the last like couple of months. So yeah.
Yeah, I bet. That's cool. Well, and where, to expand like this, there seems to be two things that are necessary, and there could be more, but I'm just talking off the top of my head. Two
Yeah.
things need to be necessary. Number one, you've got to have a partner that's in alignment with you guys, someone that you've known, not just some PT that you just hired off the street and start opening up a clinic, but probably has worked in one of your clinics for a period of time, and they're value aligned. You're on the same page. But then you also have to have a pretty solid standard policy and procedure manual so that everyone's not running off doing their own different thing at 6 different clinics, right? I mean, talk to me a little bit about those two things.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, the first part, we were really careful from the very beginning, right? With everybody that we hire, we've learned that like the hiring process is super important. So from the first time we meet somebody, we interview them 3 or 4 times. We really want to
Right.
make sure they're a good fit. They come and hang out with us in the clinic before
Good.
we hire them. So
Good.
it's fair to both of us. We want them to know what a day is like in our clinic as well, see if they can see themselves fitting in there. So yeah,
Right.
anybody who potentially becomes a partner has worked for us for at least a couple of years.
Nice.
that way we really get to know them as a clinician, but also as a person, right? And so that is for sure, that is a really important part of this whole partnership process. And we're always kind of like, even from the beginning, you know, we ask people what their long-term goals are with physical therapy. And if somebody mentions that, hey, they would like to have some ownership one day, then, you know, we kind of like recognize that person, and we'll start to do some things from the get-go with them to maybe help foster those ideas to see if they're really serious about it.
Now, is that something that you actually advertise? Will you advertise in your PT
we don't
ads
advertise,
that's
but now
partnership
that we have, you know, 7 clinics we're in southern New Jersey, so in between like Philadelphia and the shore, and it's a pretty, you know, PT is kind of a small world, so now there's a lot of PTs that, you know, that don't work for us that know what our model is. And anybody so I get a ton of resumes now because people know that, you know, they would have at least have the potential to move into some type of like partnership with us. It's not super easy to kind of get to that point, but you know, we have proof that this is what we do. So people like that. So it's a really good recruitment tool for us as well to get PTs interested in us who are motivated enough to possibly have their own clinic or be a partner down the road.
And
so it's really helpful.
Are there some people who have expressed interest in that where you said, no, it's probably not a good fit? Have you ever come across that yet?
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
You know, like, but a lot of it is basically self-realized by them. Like, I think a lot of people feel like they want to open their own clinic or want to be a partner, but then sometimes when it comes down to it, you know, the realization is there that, hey, this is a lot of work and it's not easy. One thing that we're doing now, though, is, and we're kicking this off in January, right? And really, this is motivated by us recognizing the need. If we're going to continue to grow, right? We don't want to grow just to like be able to say we have like 10 clinics or 15 clinics. We want to make sure that any clinic we open has a really good chance of being successful. Right.
Really?
And so far we're 5 for 5, hopefully 7 for 7 a year from now. But so we're starting what we call like a leadership program where having people, you know, we have 25 PTs in the practice, and, you know, this is open to all of them. So they have to apply for it. And starting in January, it's a year-long program where we're mentoring them to basically become clinic managers or partners, you know, so.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we're only going to take 4 or 5 people, you know, a year because we want it to be, you know, a little bit exclusive, but we want the group to be small so we can get really good discussion going. And plus, if we took everybody the first year, I don't know what I would do the second year anyway. Or probably wouldn't have it, you know. So yeah.
Well, and that kind of creates a demand. I mean, to say that it's exclusive to just a certain number of people, that means you're going to weed out some people, but it also inspires some people like, oh, I want to be part of that group.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I hope that's what it does. Right. There might be people that are disappointed if they don't get into it the first year, but, you know, we'll make sure that, hey, it's not because we don't think you can do it. It's just because, listen, these are the 4 or 5 people we thought were best for this right now. But like, hey, you know, I hope you're still interested next year when the chance comes again. So. Yeah.
So they have, what is their commitment and what are you providing? So do they have to be available certain days of the week or once a month, or how much detail can you share with me about the program?
Yeah, sure. No, I'm still putting it together, but like basically there's going to be 6, you know, our clinics are all pretty close together. Nobody's more than like, let's say 40 minutes from another one, you know? So 6 times a year, we're going to have like on-sites where we do like, you know, probably a 3 or 4 hour block of on-site learning, you know, so they'll, you know, we'll have them, you know, be shut off from patient treatment for that time.
Okay.
And then in between each of those 6 on-site meetings, I'm going to do like some one-on-one meeting with each of the people in the program. And then they're going to have like some readings, like we have some required readings. Yeah, like, you know what, man, I got your podcast with Steve Rappacelli a couple months ago. You guys were talking books. And I think you guys talked about who, not how. Yep. And I immediately got that book, and that was like a life changer for me. So that is going to be one of the required readings in the
exactly
is part of the program. What else are we doing? I think 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's the first reading. That has to be read before the whole program starts.
Nice.
Traction we're going to do. Yeah, cool. Really good books, some TED Talks. Some podcasts, that kind of stuff. So
that's great. Yeah, we had something similar, right? We had a leadership development program, and there was a library of books and that were essentially required reading, because this is how me and my partner came to have the business beliefs that we have. So it's imperative that you read those same books and we discuss what's important about them. And they can have their own mindsets as well, but it aligns the mentalities, if you will, mindsets. They can see, oh, that's why you guys do that thing. Okay, now I understand. And they can go back and two and two together. And so it's
Sure.
really,
Yeah, we want
really
to
cool.
create like an attitude of like lifelong learning, right? And a lot of the people in the program, right, they're probably more focused on their clinical learning, which is great, because believe me, we want to have awesome clinicians.
Sure.
But we also want people to like, to take the next step and like, how can I further myself as a manager or as a leader or as a partner in the company as well. So I'm looking forward to that component for sure.
That's going to be really cool, because honestly, we're physical therapists. We haven't had this kind of training before. And for you to share that with your team members, like, this is how to be a leader, this is how we run a business, and to pull back that curtain and give them that training that all your 5 to 7 partners have now, is something that most people pay money for. They'll
I hope they appreciate it. We want to invest in them though. We view it as an investment in our employees, and I know that it's going to come back to pay us dividends big time. So
yeah. And so the second part of the question then is, how much effort and what have you done to unify policy and procedures across all those clinics?
Yeah, that's I'm the COO in the company, and I always joke with my partner, I'm probably the least organized person in the whole clinic or in the whole business.
Yeah.
And somehow that got thrown onto my plate, which is ironic. But I have somebody that works with me that is just like, she's a total like all-star for us. And but right, we that's ever evolving, so I meet with her, we meet every week to make sure that, hey, here's a gap here. We have to, figure out a way to fill in the gap. Something as simple as keeping track of our copay collection rate, or hey, did these plan of cares get all faxed out? We missed 3 from last month. So right, we have a very and it's ever evolving. We're becoming better and better at being organized and having some centralized processes and systems. Otherwise, stuff would fall apart. So
well, it sounds like you found your who to help you
for sure, because I'm definitely not the who for that. I would be the worst one. The company would fall apart if I was the who on the operations part.
But it's a worthy investment, because to pay her to do that with you in coordination is going to be essential for you guys to continue to expand. I mean, when you start expanding, this is probably something that you might have seen as you took that first location on and the next location, is that as you started expanding, those holes and those weaknesses just started to get magnified and exaggerated.
Yeah, for sure. And then so we saw that, we recognized that and said, oh wow, we need an employee that is dedicated to this. And at first you're like, are we really going to pay somebody to do something that just seems like so easy? But then once I didn't have to do it as much and my partner didn't have to do it as much anymore, it was like, oh man, how do we even think that this wasn't going to be worth it? So
yeah. And how did it get done in the past?
Right. Yeah. We would just do it whenever we could, so anyway. Yeah.
And now as you're working with your partners, it's not like hey, here's your clinic, go off and do it. That's great. We'll just all collect some money. What kind of communication schedule do you have with them? How do they report things to you? How does that all work out? What is your relationship now?
Yeah. So it's good. But that's another thing that's, really high on our priority list is we want our relationships with our partners to be as good as they can be, and, one of the one of the negative things, or one of the tough things that we went through in having partners was, I think at first my partner and I think we just took some things for granted and we didn't do a great job communicating some things. And that led to some frustrations on the partner's side and with my partner and I as well.
Right.
And so, that just kind of demonstrated to us, hey, here's how important it is for everybody to be on the same page, right? So as a leadership team, so my partner and I, we meet with all the partners once a quarter. So we do a 3-hour partner meeting.
Nice.
Actually, we have our next one next week. And then on an individual basis, so my partner and I, we communicate with all the partners on a regular basis, one-on-one. Everybody's a little different with how they want to communicate. One guy I talk with every week, another one I talk with every 2 weeks, one is once a month. So as long as we feel like that our relationships are good and that we're not losing anything, whatever frequency they want, we're happy with. But there's a structure to each call. You know, there's certain things that we talk about and go over.
Yeah.
And sometimes it ends up being like, you know, half the conversation is just talking about, you know, non-PT stuff, talking about life too. Again, to develop the, you know, the relationships, not just the professional component of it, but even like the personal component. So.
And so you being the COO, are you the one that's also getting the clinical statistics on a routine basis, reviewing them, and then also discussing if there are issues or outpoints or decline in stats?
Yeah. So yeah, that's on my task list for sure. So yeah, so we've gotten really good at, you know, defining what metrics are most important to us and getting them in an organized fashion in basically one centralized spreadsheet. We still have a bunch of spreadsheets, and one of the frustrations was, oh man, I got this spreadsheet, I got that spreadsheet, I don't even know what to look at, and people ended up not looking at anything. And just in the last like 6 months or so, we've really, hey, here's what you guys need to look at the most. It's all on this one spreadsheet, and that has made life a lot easier for all of us, for sure.
I got you. And when you guys are all together, what kind of things are you discussing on those quarterlies?
Yeah, you know, just like stuff that's relevant to the entire company. So usually, like I know next week my partner, he's a big fan of the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So probably like an hour of the meeting is going to be, he's doing an exercise where I don't even know what's on tap for that. I just saw it on the agenda. So I'm pretty excited to see what he has in store for us. So there's definitely some like, almost like a team bonding component to that meeting. But then there's just like, hey, here's a policy we didn't think of, right? So we, you know, kind of meet collectively to come up with decisions, right? And you know, that was another thing that was hard for me, and I would imagine for my partner too, was by including other partners with us, all of a sudden we don't have all of the, you know, we're not the only ones making the decisions anymore.
You don't have all the say anymore, huh?
Right. And you know, only think of a couple situations where there was some frustration, but for the most part, right, because our partners, we pretty much share the same values, you know, so it hasn't been as much of a negative as I think it could have been if we weren't really careful about choosing who our partners are. So, but yeah, you do, man. You lose some of your decision-making authority. So
I'm assuming you still kind of have veto power. Like you and Ken probably still hold that to some extent when you come to those
on the basis of like the individual clinics, right? But yeah, and I guess again. You know, but I'll tell you, last year when we were faced with the proposition of closing or staying open, right, we put it out to a vote, right? And at the time, I think there was, I can't remember how many partners, I think there were 7 of us maybe. And anyway, my vote was on the losing end, right? And I had to accept it. You know, like I wanted to be a certain, I won't say which side I was, but my vote lost and I had to live with it, you know, and that ate at me for a little bit, but then eventually like I came to accept it. This is the route I chose.
Yeah. And that says a lot to the relationships that you've established with your other owners in that. And it sounds like they were willing to accept it as well if it didn't go their way. But once it did, then things would, you know, okay, this is what we're doing. And it's all oars going this direction. We're going to do this now. Get over yourself. This is what we're doing as a team. Huh?
Yeah. We accepted it and we move forward, you know.
That's cool.
You know, I'll toot our own horn. 2020, I talked to a lot of other practices and, you know, they were, you know, down in visits, down in revenue. 2020 compared to 19, we were up in visits and up in revenue. So, and that's basically just a shout out to all of our partners and all of our employees that we were able to pull that off. So,
yeah. And what do you think it was? I mean, if you were to look back and say, you know, it's because of this, maybe one action or simply one characteristic that you could name as as a descriptor for your company, what would, if you look back, what would you think that reason was that things went well?
Yeah, you know what? I'll say just like, sometimes pride gets in the way of a lot of things. So it's everybody's ability to put away their pride, right? And accept, because there was a lot of different decisions we made, and I think there was disagreement with all of the decisions, but once the decision was made, we were able to just like put away our own personal biases and just, hey, this is what we decided to do, we're going to move forward and make the best of it. So the leadership, not just my partner and I, but the leadership of all the partners, and then the rest of the employees, right? We have like 65 employees, them seeing kind of like a unified front, I felt like was a huge factor. And the other thing I'll say is we were very transparent with any decisions we made. We were really transparent with all of our employees. Hey, here's what we're doing. Like we furloughed people for a while, and that was really hard to do, but we were upfront with them and we told them what was going on, and hey, this is our plan to be able to get you back. So I know that was much
great. Well,
yeah.
Good. Congratulations on what you've developed so far. It's amazing to see the growth of your business over time. And it sounds like you've really leaned on the things that you've been reading. You and Ken have actually put some of these things into practice, and you've been intentional about your growth. Yeah, this opportunity was afforded to you. You weren't necessarily seeking to open that second location, but once you did, you recognized here are some of the things that we need to do in order to make this successful.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And it just kind of like took off from there. We said, hey, this is kind of a good idea. Let's, we really like giving people opportunities to like be in positions of greater responsibility. We think it's awesome when we tell a partner that they can write like a profitability check for their profits for last month, so and to give them the power to hire the therapist the ideal therapist they want at their clinic, right? They're in charge of all that. We might help out if they want an opinion, but we just really like allowing the ability to put people in a position where they can succeed and do their best. I know that might sound kind of corny, but that's a really cool thing to be able to do.
Well, and it can be very fulfilling, right?
Exactly.
To allow other people to succeed like that. That's really cool. Now, and we've covered some of the pros and some of the cons. Are there other like hiccups that you've had along the way that you want to share?
Just the hardest thing is the organization of it all, right? That's like getting back to that COO stuff. And believe me, my partner helps out plenty with the organization, because there's the financial organization, the metric organization.
Right.
That's the hardest thing. My partner and I, we still treat, but we're treating less and less. And, we're dedicating more of our time towards, some of these like centralized things that, just time needs to be spent on them, right? We want to grow, but we want to grow in an organized and controlled manner. So that is, I would say, one of the biggest challenges is just keeping everything organized as the company gets bigger.
Yeah, exactly. And do you foresee a point where you and Ken won't be treating anymore? And to follow up with that, would you be okay as some of those clinic partnerships, as their businesses started growing, if they started pulling away a little bit more from treating so they could work on the business?
Yeah. So one guy is about one of the partners is decreasing his treatment a little bit, right? And he's having one of his current PTs take over as manager in his office, and he has our full support. We think that's great, because now he's thinking about, hey, maybe I want to have like a second office that I'm a partner in,
Right.
So he'll have somebody that can run the day-to-day of his current office,
Right.
I really like to treat. I would love to get into a position, and I'm getting close, where I can just kind of like choose I have a bunch of friends, right? They're runners and triathletes, right? And they're all getting banged up. So if they call me and they need to be treated, I want to say, yeah, I'll get you on my schedule, no problem, right? So, and we have awesome therapists in all of our clinics, and it's really cool to put them in positions where they're getting the chance to treat maybe the patients that would normally fall in on my schedule, so it's really good to mentor them and to, help them succeed as a clinician as well.
Well, that's really cool. And along this way, you've read some books. Did you get any consulting or coaching along the way to guide you guys a little bit on some of these decisions? Did you have a mentor?
Right. We just started. We just started working with Steve Stalzer and Mike Oster. Yeah, they're with 8150.
Yeah, 8150
8150
advisors.
advisors.
Yep.
And they were recommended to us by a couple of people in my peer-to-peer group. And so we just started basically like 2 months ago with them. And, any private practice owner out there who's wondering if it's worth the investment, because it's hard, right? It costs money. It's not free, but
That's right.
it helps you. I've only been doing it for 2 months, and I'm not even batting an eye at, I don't even know what the cost is, but like it could be anything. Don't let Steve hear this, right? But like,
right.
it holds you accountable, and it spurs you to do things that that maybe you wouldn't think of to do on your own.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
I love doing it, and I do it together. My partner and I sit with them. We do it every other week, and we do it together. So
that's awesome. Cool, man. Well, congratulations. And we've just got a few minutes left here, but you want to share with us a little bit about what you're doing in New Jersey that you might want to share with other owners across the country?
Yeah. So, I have to give credit to my partner for this. So we are in New Jersey, right? And New Jersey is one of the least, in terms of the collections, we have probably like one of the lower collection rates in the reimbursement rates from private insurance companies in the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we really want private practice to survive. And all around us, there's private practices that have been selling to corporate entities and hospital entities. And we don't want to do that, right? My partner and I, our intention is for our current partners to be, the majority owners of the clinic down the road when, I decide not to work anymore. So we're making a push to basically form what's called a super group, where we're getting other private practices to join up with us. We're not purchasing them. There's no equity exchange, but we have to share certain services in order to be considered a common entity. So we're going to take over their billing. They're going to use our EMR. We'll do their payroll. We'll do their benefits to allow us to gain geographic scope, and also just to become a bigger company so that insurance companies would maybe listen to us a little bit more readily in terms of negotiating contracts. So we're just starting that. I mean, we've done all the meetings, we've met with the lawyers, all the paperwork's in place. Now we're just trying to recruit clinics that are interested in joining up with us. So that's a big thing on our radar.
That's huge. Yeah, congratulations. And so you're essentially just taking this umbrella company that holds all these major administrative tasks, and where currently all of the LLCs underneath that umbrella are the ones that you either own or are partners with the partners of your clinics. You're just expanding that to include people who you have no financial relationship with. You're just going to unify some of the admins related stuff, whatever it takes to be considered a shared entity, I guess, huh?
Yeah. And, from experience, we know that like there are practices out there that the owners, they have so many headaches and they can't focus on the things they want to focus on. So we'll take away some of the headaches, right? Like billing, like payroll, and allow them to kind of build their practice. So hopefully we're confident that we have some interest, and we're confident in the next 1 to 2 years, we'll have a bunch of clinics that have kind of like signed up with us. So.
Well, this being October 2021, man, we'll have to do another podcast episode in 23 or something like that.
Yeah, okay. Let's do early 2023. We'll check in and see where we're at. Hold me accountable. There we go.
That's right. That'd be cool. Cool. Well, anything else you want to share in terms of the partnership models, LLCs that you're established that you would like to tell?
Yeah, what the last thing I'll say is, we've had people who think we're crazy for sharing our equity with partners and the amount of equity that we allow people to have. But I wouldn't do it any other way, because there's just so many benefits to it. One, like it allows me to have, like, believe me, I still work a lot of hours, but I have a wife and kids. I can spend time with them because I'm not doing every single thing for every single clinic that I own. So yeah, for private practice owners that are thinking about doing this, I'm happy to be a resource as well. If you want to reach out to me, I'm happy to talk to you about pros and cons and any of the details that that you would want to know about. But yeah, I'm a big fan of doing it this way.
And from my point of view, of the people in my network that have multiple practices, greater than 5, right? The ones that are the most successful and are expanding the most are those that have established these kind of partnership relationships with value aligned people on their
Yeah.
teams that they've vetted and know they're going to work well. The personalities mesh, the values align, they understand their purpose and their vision. That all aligns, and it's been super successful to the scope of some of my friends. And I had, for example, Blaine Steinmack on the podcast in the past. I think he's over 30 clinics now, and a vast majority of those are partnerships, and they're across different states and that kind of stuff. So it's the way to go. So
Yeah,
if people
makes
did
sense.
if people wanted to ask you or reach out to
Yep.
you, how can they get in touch with you?
Yep. My cell number is 508-259-5481. You can call or text me. My email, jeffsal, JEFFSAL @hotmail.com. That's the easiest email to get in touch with me. I'm happy to be a resource for sure.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing today, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll have to stay in touch.
Yeah,
2023, cool. We'll come back around.
Yeah, keep the good shows coming, man.
Thanks, dude.
All
I
right, thanks.
appreciate it.